Commissioner Hill, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, perfect. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started with our meeting. Welcome, everybody. Good morning. This is the February 6, 2024 City Planning Commission meeting. I can't believe my birthday and Valentine's Day is just a little over a week away. So we appreciate you attending the meeting today, and the commissioners look forward to hearing your case. We understand every project is important and unique, and we want to make sure we address all of the docket items individually with the attention that they deserve to build consensus between the applicant, public, and city staff. We also believe we can reach consensus by being brief yet heard. Because our meeting is recorded and hybrid, we have time limits for the cases we will hear, which is 5 minutes for staff presentations and 20 minutes for the applicant, plus any questions by the commissioners. When we move to public comments, I will call on those who are joining us in person, followed by those who are joining us virtually. If you're joining virtually, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature so staff can coordinate your turn to speak. And then as you join the meeting, please be ready to speak with your camera turned on and your microphone unmuted. This will help us keep our meeting on track. Public comments are expected to be no longer than 2 minutes when speaking as an individual, or up to 5 minutes when representing a community association or a larger group. In all instances, please limit repetitive comments. So as we get started with our meeting today, I asked staff to give us some additional ground rules and instructions to ensure that we have minimal disruption and maximum clarity. So Larissa, you're up.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. As you previously stated, this is a hybrid meeting. For those attending online, there are 2 categories of people participating in the meeting. There's attendees and panelists. Right now, the only panelists are the commission members and city staff. If you are an applicant or a citizen interested in a case, use the raise hand function when the chair calls a case to let staff know they should promote you to a panelist position. When you're promoted, you will need to accept the promotion, and it will appear momentarily as if you have been disconnected. However, you will be reconnected shortly. As was previously stated, please turn on your camera when you are promoted and your microphone so that the commission can see and hear you. If you are joining us via the app or on a phone or computer, please change your screen name to reflect your legal name. If you are calling in with a phone number, you cannot adjust your screen name, and you will also need to not be able to use the raise hand function in Zoom. If you are joining by phone, you will need to raise your hand by pressing star followed by the number 9. For those attending in person, please approach the microphone to my right and to give your testimony, and you will need to have your exhibits, presentation, photos, or maps ready on a jump drive and email the exhibits if admitted to your planner. If you are attending in person, please do not join the Zoom meeting as well. Joining the meeting in both manners causes a lot of unnecessary feedback and audio disruptions. When the chair is ready to take public testimony, we will begin with those attending in person and then move on to those attending virtually. And as a reminder, the chat box is only for questions about the agenda, and merits of each case should not be discussed in the chat box. And that is all, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so let's go ahead and start with the consent agenda items, please.
Consent agenda item number 1 is case number final plat 2024-00001, a request to approve a final plat in District MPD on about 35 acres generally located at the northeast corner of Botts Road and Highway 150, creating 1 lot and 4 tracts for the purposes of industrial development. Staff is requesting to pull this item off the agenda or off the consent docket to correct some conditions. And consent item number 2 is case number final plat 2023-00034, a request to approve a final plat in District MPD on about 13 acres generally located at the northwest corner of Northeast 48th Street and North Randolph Road, creating 3 lots and 1 tract for a mixed-use development, and staff is recommending approval with conditions.
Okay, so let's start with docket item C2 first. Any questions from the commissioners regarding that? Is there a way by chance to see? I can't see Commissioner Hill on our TV screens. Is that possible?
I can try and find out. 1 second.
Okay. Any questions, Commissioner Hill, on docket item C2?
No questions for me.
Okay. So with that, let's go ahead and open it up for any public testimony. If there's anybody out there that would like to speak regarding docket item C2, please come forward or raise your hand using the Zoom feature and you will be called upon.
There is no one wishing to speak in the chambers and one person online with their hand raised. I'm promoting Bill Quatman.
Okay.
All right, he has been promoted.
I'm sorry.
He has been promoted.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I misunderstood the instructions. I raised my hand for another agenda item.
Okay. So you're not here to speak
No
on docket
comment.
item C1 or C2, correct?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else?
No one else appears with their hand raised.
Okay, so let's go ahead and close public testimony then. And I'll take a motion on docket item C2, please.
Chair Crowell, I move to approve docket item C2.
Uh-oh. Hopefully you guys can hear me. We can't see the chamber.
We also lost audio. We can't hear you either.
I just sent Kobe a email. Let me see. Maybe I can text him.
They cut us off trying to get your pretty face on camera, Coco.
Listen, you know, Kobe is like, you gotta be on camera.
Good to see you though.
Good to see you too.
I'm anxious to see Bruce too.
Yeah, I just text Kobe, so hopefully he'll get the email or the text.
Okay.
I'm gonna try to drop Stone off at school early the next CPC so I can make it in person. He catches the bus at 8:45 and I have to be here, make sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Don't be starting those shenanigans. You're too young for that.
Yes, 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 yes.
So how's it? They muted us both. What are they doing to us?
They can still hear us, is what they're saying.
Okay. Can you hear us, Commissioner Hill?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Now we can see you. And thanks for the nice comments you guys had earlier in the conversation. We enjoyed it here in the chambers.
We're just catching up. Sorry, guys.
Okay. All right, so we kind of started the meeting. Let's go ahead and we're going to restart the whole thing because I think the recording wasn't working yet and the video audio wasn't working either. So, all right, pull up my notes again. All right, so welcome everybody to the February 6, 2024 City Planning Commission meeting. We appreciate you being here and the commissioners look forward to hearing your case. We understand every project is important and unique, and we want to make sure we address all the docket items individually with the attention they deserve to build consensus between the applicant, public, and city staff. We also believe we can reach consensus by being brief yet heard. Because our meeting is recorded and hybrid, we have time limits for the cases that we hear, which is 5 minutes for staff presentations and 20 minutes for the applicant, plus any questions by the commissioners. When we move to public comments, I will call on those who are joining us virtually, followed by those, call on people that are here in the meeting first, followed by those who are joining us virtually. As you join the meeting from a virtual standpoint, please be ready to speak with your camera turned on and your microphone unmuted. Public comments are expected to be no longer than 2 minutes when speaking as an individual or up to 5 minutes when representing a community association or a larger group. In all instances, please limit repetitive comments. So as we start our meeting, I ask staff to provide us some additional ground rules to make sure we have minimal disruption and maximum clarity. So take 2, Larissa.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a hybrid meeting. I will go through the procedure for the meeting. Again, for those attending online, there are 2 categories of people participating in the meeting, attendees and panelists. Right now, the only panelists are the commission members and city staff. If you are an applicant or a citizen who is interested in a case, use the raise hand function when the chair calls the case to let staff know they should promote you to a panelist position. When you're promoted, you will need to accept that promotion and it will appear as if you have been disconnected. However, you will reconnect shortly. At the time of the promotion, the chair would like for you to turn on your camera and microphone so that the commission can see and hear you when it is your time to talk. Your microphone needs to always be on mute unless you are giving testimony at the appropriate time. If you are joining us via the app or a phone or computer, please change your screen name to reflect your legal name. Understand that if you're calling in with a phone number, you cannot adjust your screen name, and you will also not be able to use the raise hand function. If you're joining by telephone, you can raise your hand when the case is called by pressing star followed by the number 9. For those attending in person, please approach the microphone to my right when it is appropriate to give testimony and have all your exhibits ready on a jump drive and emailed to your planner. If you're in person, please do not attend the meeting on Zoom as well, as it will cause a lot of unnecessary feedback and audio disruptions. When the chair is ready to take public testimony, we will begin with those attending in person and then move on to those attending virtually. As a reminder, the chat box is only for questions about the agenda and merits of each case should not be discussed in the chat box. And that is all, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. So let's go ahead and open up and start the meeting with our consent agenda items, please.
Consent agenda item number 1 is final plat 2024-00001. A request to approve a final plat in District MPD on about 35 acres generally located at the northeast corner of Botts Road and Highway 150, creating 1 lot and 4 tracts for the purposes of industrial development. Staff requests to pull this item off consent to correct some conditions. And consent item number 2 is final plat 2023-00034, a request to approve a final plat in District MPD on about 13 acres generally located at the northwest corner of Northeast 48th Street and North Randolph Road, creating 3 lots and 1 tract for a mixed-use development. And staff recommends approval with conditions.
Okay, so let's start with docket item C2. Any questions from the commissioners to city staff?
No.
Okay, seeing none, let's go ahead and open it up for public testimony. If there's anybody out there that would like to speak regarding docket item C2, please come forward or raise your hand using the Zoom feature and you will be called upon.
There is no one in the chamber wishing to speak and no one online has their hand raised.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and close public testimony and I'll take a motion, please, on docket item C2.
Chair Crowell, I move to approve docket item C2 with conditions.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second for approval of docket item C2. Paulina, can you take roll call on that motion, please?
Beasley,
Aye.
Prowl,
Aye.
Anders,
Aye.
Hasek,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Padilla.
Aye.
Okay, it looks like the motion passes 6-0 for docket item C2. All right, so since we're going to poll docket item C1, let's go ahead and hear from staff and the applicant if the applicant's available. The applicant available for docket item C1?
Yes, there are two
They're
people
online?
with their hands raised.
Okay,
I'm promoting Jake Hodson and S. Cargill. And they have both been promoted.
okay.
Okay, so
Let's start with city staff comments first, and then we'll get to the applicant afterwards.
Okay, Matthew Barnes, City Planning and Development Management Division for C1, which is the East Campus, Phase 1 final plat. Just a short overview. It's down near the southern tip of Kansas City. And here is an overview of the final plat. This is a continuation of the,
Matt, you have to share your screen to Zoom.
oh,
You see that, Commissioner Hill?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, thank you.
thank you. This is, was approved for the NNSA East Campus. There's two conditions that the applicant and city staff have agreed upon to modify. The first one is the deletion of condition number 2, which states that the developer shall secure permits to extend public sanitary and stormwater conveyance systems to serve all proposed lots within the development and determine adequacy of receiving systems as required by the Land Development Division prior to recording the plat or issuance of a building permit, whichever occurs first. The second condition is a revision of condition number 6. This condition revises from prior to recording of the final plat to prior to issuance of the full building permit. I can take any questions.
Okay, any questions from the commission regarding these condition changes?
Nope.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and welcome the applicant then. Anything you'd like to add regarding docket item C1?
No, Mr. Commissioner, or Chair, we've been working with staff on this for quite some time and we've all come to an agreement and we just ask that you approve this final plat for the East Campus project. We look forward to building it.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, so at this time, let's go ahead and open it up for public testimony. If there's anybody out there that would like to speak regarding docket item C1, please come forward or raise your hand using the Zoom feature and you will be called upon.
Mr. Chair, no one wishes to speak in the chambers, and no one has their hand raised on Zoom.
Okay, so let's go ahead and close public testimony then. Anything else to add from the applicant standpoint or staff? Okay,
No, sir.
All right, with that, I'll take a motion from the commission, please.
Chair Crowell, I move to approve docket item C1 with conditions, deleting condition number 2 and revising condition number 6 to state prior to issuance of a full building permit as opposed to prior to recording the plat.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second for approval of docket item C1 with changes to the conditions stated. Paulina, can you take roll call on that motion, please?
Beasley,
Aye.
Prowl,
Aye.
Anders,
Aye.
Hasek,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Padilla.
Aye.
Okay, it looks like the motion passes 6-0. Thank you for bringing it in and good luck as you move forward. All right, so with that, let's go to our regular agenda items, beginning with those that are looking to be continued to a future date.
Okay, the first continuance starts at case or docket item number 5, case number SUP 2023-00044, a request to approve a special use permit to allow for gasoline and fuel sales in District B3-2 on about 2 acres generally located at 400 feet north of the corner of Blue Ridge Boulevard and Old Santa Fe Road. Staff is recommending continuance without fee to February 20th. Docket item number 6 is SUP 2023-00053, a request to approve a special use permit for a 5,536 space parking lot for warehousing, wholesaling, freight movement outdoor on 26.9 acres generally located south of Missouri Highway 210 and east of Birmingham Levy District Road. Staff is recommending continuance without fee to February 20th. Docket item number 7 is ROW 2023-00045, a request to approve a vacation of public right-of-way of Walnut Street of about 30,000 square feet, generally located on Walnut Street between East 39th Street and East 40th Street. Staff is recommending continuance without fee to March 5th of 2024. And the final docket item to be continued is number 8, right-of-way 2023-00007, a request to approve a vacation of public right-of-way of about 162 feet, generally located on the west side of Santa Fe Street between West 11th Street and Union Avenue. Staff recommends continuance without fee to February 20th.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners regarding continuance of docket items 5 through 8? I'm kind of curious, with the docket item 2 that's coming docket item 1 that's coming before us, will that have any effect on docket item 5 moving forward?
Yes, it will.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right, let's see. I guess we're looking at public testimony. If there's anybody out there that would like to speak regarding continuance of docket items 5, 6, 7, or 8, please come forward or raise your hand using the Zoom feature and you will be called upon.
Mr. Chair, no one appears in the chamber wishing to speak, and no one online has their hand raised.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and close public testimony then, and I'll take a motion on the continuances, please.
Chair Crowell, Chair Crowell, I move to approve docket items, or I move to continue docket items 5, 6, 7, and 8 as stated in the docket.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second for continuance of docket items 5 through 8 as stated on the docket agenda. Paulina, can you take roll call on motion, please?
Beasley,
Aye.
Crow,
Aye.
Anders.
Aye.
Hasek.
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Padilla.
Aye.
Okay, it looks like the motion passes for the continuance of those docket items as stated. All right, with that, let's go back to docket item number 1, please.
Docket item number 1 is MISC 2024-00001, declaring a temporary moratorium on the issuance or approval of any new permits, plan review, project plans, and zoning changes for gas stations within Kansas City, and directing staff to review and recommend any appropriate text amendments to the zoning and development code. And Connor Swanton will be presenting.
Yep, let me check. Commissioner Beasley, can you see the presentation? Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Just want to make sure they can see.
Connor Swanton, I'm Legislative Director. The applicant for this item is 5th District Councilman. Background here. 2022, Kansas City adopted the city's climate and resiliency plan. Plan included a goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, a goal to achieve carbon neutrality by 2030 for city operations, by 2040. Beyond just greenhouse gas emissions, that gas Common contaminants frequently found at gas stations are associated with health issues and can detrimentally impact neighboring communities. Petroleum leaks can also harm nearby properties. In addition to the environmental issues caused by gas stations, Councilman Curls is a concern about an oversaturation of gas stations in Kansas City.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the slides are not transitioning.
Oh, sorry
Uh,
about that.
That's okay. Thank you.
No. Here we are. In addition to the environmental issues caused by gas stations, Councilman Curls has a concern about oversaturation within Kansas City. He wants to ensure that we're promoting equitable development and the best land use possible. During the moratorium, Councilman Curls is directing city staff to review zoning code and other relevant regulatory controls and recommend any changes.
Okay, any questions from the commission regarding a moratorium on gas stations within the city limits?
Yeah, so
I
we,
Sorry.
go ahead, Commissioner Hill.
No, my question is this geographically based or is this citywide moratorium?
Citywide.
Okay, and then is there already a process? So like Chair Kraus said, we have a case that's going to be continued, but does that mean that we won't see any potential projects and that you all have a process to take those projects to before recommending to us? Or can you explain the process for this?
So when a moratorium is in effect, then any applications that are in process will be on hold, and any new applications will not be able to move forward in the process. So this gives the city time to evaluate current ordinances and what we have in there today, look at best practices, and then evaluate and see if there's a recommendation that we would then bring forward to this body and then forward onto the city council. For any improvements to the code or, again, looking for best practices and how we can protect the community from the environmental aspects, but also just in any impacts that the gas stations would have on the community. Please understand, though, this does not include convenience stores. So those are separate. This is purely gas stations. So if someone wants to do a convenience store, that's beverage and retail sales. And so
They just can't add the fuel cells as part of it.
not during this time frame.
Okay. So there's a couple of dates in the letter that's provided, and I'm sorry, Commissioner Hill, if I'm taking over for you.
Oh, no,
Just
go ahead.
Just follow-up question. So what happens between now and July 11th, and then what happens between July 11th and August 8th?
That's for staff to review best practices and recommend any changes to zoning codes. But they'll be able to look at other cities, what other places are doing, and give us some.
Okay. And then what's, at the end of the day, what's the full intent? To totally get rid of, not allow any other gas station to be built or any fuel cells other than what we already have, or a conversion, or it's,
I wouldn't say that. I think it's to make sure we're thinking through this as, our energy use changes. We want to make sure we're not letting these pop up all over, but we want to just be thinking smartly how these are
okay. Commissioner Hill, do you have follow-up questions? I'm sorry.
No, I really just have comments, so I can wait.
Go ahead, if you got them.
Well, one of the things I was gonna say is, for me, I'm excited to see this moratorium since I've been on the commission, particularly though in urban cores, I've seen an oversaturation of gas stations. If you just go from Independence Avenue to like 23rd, 24th Street, from Jackson to Cleveland, it's about 5 or 6. And so I just think, and we can continue to see them because our job is to say, is this proper land use? Is it permissible? Do they have all their, ducks in a row? So we often end up having to approve those, but there's not really a need for them. So I'm surprised to see it citywide, but I do support the moratorium.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Beasley, any questions?
No, I was just going to ask to have the screen share changed and they just did it. So no, I'm good right now.
Okay.
So, the purpose of a moratorium, so if a moratorium weren't in place or doesn't get put in place, all the work could still be done. The moratorium simply stops existing projects. Do you have a sense of how many projects you're trying to prevent from potentially seeing the process through in this time period?
I don't know how many we have active right now. We haven't done that analysis. And again, to be clear, we're not trying to keep anything from happening. I think this is just allowing the city time to analyze what we have in place and see if there's improvements that could be made based on the criteria that's set here. So those could move forward following, probably. They may have to adjust what they've submitted to meet whatever criteria that may come before it. But again, that'll be a whole nother approval process, right? This gives staff time to research and come forward with something that you all can consider.
And then in the possible outcomes post, August 8th, it could be here are the criteria that works, or it could be we're not going to allow any new gas stations for a certain period of time. Both ends of that spectrum.
I've never seen us do so. I'm not sure, and that might be a more of a legal answer, but I don't think we can say you can't apply for anything within a certain amount of time unless there's a moratorium stopping that. But normally to do a moratorium, you have to have facts of the reasons for why you're halting temporarily. So I think really it's looking at, zoning and where do we allow these and, maybe it's setbacks from residential areas and, do we want more setbacks or it's, more landscaping. I don't know. I mean, it could be a multitude of things. I don't know because we haven't done that research yet. I should state that there are a couple of provisions that were added in here that does allow for certain instances where someone could move forward if it's in a manufacturing district, as you'll note in section 1. That have been previously approved by the city council through an approval of a development plan or master development plan and the construction of a new gas station that involves the demolition of an existing. So there are some where someone's pretty far down the road.
And where are you reading from? Sorry.
Under section 1 of the proposed, did you read?
Was that on Compass, Casey?
I think all we have really is a letter
Yeah.
that was prepared.
Yeah, so I don't think we have that. That would be very helpful. And then, so you'll have to excuse these poor analogies because I don't have a good context for this. So 2 things I'm thinking of. One is tree preservation, canopy work that was done. There was a timeline for that. And so then I think about incentives for multifamily and how there was kind of like a rush to get projects in before the new rules took place. So is the intent of a moratorium to prevent a rush of applications? So if there wasn't a moratorium and you said by August, we're going to try as a council, as a city to have a better understanding of what the city needs and wants in terms of gas stations, is the fear that then there would be this rush to submit a ton of gas station applications to get in before that?
I can try to address that. So the moratorium really is just to maintain status quo while city planning and development staff is doing this research that they're being asked to do by the sponsor. So that, as you say, we don't have projects that are coming forward that might not comply with whatever new regulations might come about as a result of the study that they're being asked to perform. So it's just to kind of put a pause on things temporarily until, and I don't like Diane was saying, we don't really know what new regulations would come out of this because the study hasn't been completed.
That would
But
just
this
terrify me if I was in the business of gas stations, obviously, to say we're going to pause and I don't know what the rules are going to be and you might not have a chance in the future to build a gas station. That's why I was just curious why a moratorium is, because if I were in the business of gas stations, I would say, well, why can't you do this research right now and then decide? But it's just, and so the follow-up would be, I would like more clarity as to, and it might be in that document, which we don't have, but would be understanding how far along in the process you can be to continue with your project, which I think you kind of just read and alluded to. I might have not just processed it, fast enough when I heard it, but I would like to have a better understanding of if someone Like, at what point in the process does someone have to stop, and how how invested could they be already in their project?
That's fact specific.
Can I interject something to that question,
Sure.
Tyler? I think we have a prime example on the continued item number 5. So this is being continued to February 20th, and we're doing a moratorium. So when that comes back, how are we addressing that to help us understand how to work through this issue of pausing for this moratorium?
Yep, that's a great example. And to be clear, I think that I'm very sympathetic to Vice Chair Hill's sentiment, and I feel the same way. I am just concerned about giving enough clarity to people who have projects in the works, or people who are in this business who might fear that this is too uncertain to all of a sudden pause everything without having any sense of what the future might hold. And so I'd at least like to understand, before personally supporting it, what happens to projects at different stages.
My understanding is that each project is it's fact specific. So depending on how far along they are, I don't know if there's not really a definitive point in time.
So who decides that? Because, like, so let's say that I've contracted with a company and purchased millions of dollars worth of equipment, haven't started the build, but I'm under contract for millions of dollars worth of equipment. Are you all pausing the project? And who's the person who does that? I mean, I don't think the city wants to end up in lawsuits over this. And so I just think we need to figure out where we draw the line and make sure that it's reasonable.
And one suggestion I would offer is we see on different cases an opportunity to have a waiver. So I think that the city staff and legal can say, if we have projects already in the pipeline, is there a way that they can apply for a waiver if they can demonstrate that they're far along in the process? I'm hoping that the city is thinking about how to capture this type of data so that we know where existing gas stations are. That's something that we don't know when we're approving gas stations. And then there's something around saturation, around particularly in areas like Truce where there's spot zoning. So you can have a daycare, and then across the street you can have a gas station, and then down the street you can have multifamily. So I'm hopeful that if it's the pleasure of the commission to continue this to the next, I'm open to that, but I don't want us to lose sight that we have, sophisticated legal team that can create some conditions so that folks who have already invested in our city and developing and building gas stations don't lose their projects or lose money. But I don't want us to kind of, throw the baby out with the bathwater for lack of clarity at this moment.
Yep, I'll add, seeing this helps already. Understanding that it's a moratorium on the approval of any new permits, including building code permits and special use permits. And so I think what I would want to see is just even getting a little bit more specific there. So it says including building code permits and special use permits, plan review, project plans, and zoning changes. And so I think that if we can narrow the scope of that, because new permits, to me, someone might have their project approved, contracted to do the work, but they might still need another permit to finish the project. And I think that that is unfair to that business. But I totally get the idea of not seeing a new project through this body on someone that hasn't begun the process with you all. So I think if that's a reasonable line for the sponsor and other people, then that's something that I think I could fully support. Just making it really deliberate, so that way no one feels as though they're being unfairly treated halfway through their process.
Any other questions from commissioners? Okay.
And so I'll add that I imagine there's interest in passing this quickly. And so, I mean, I'm open to, depending upon Sarah and others' opinions, specifying, either figuring out the language now or requiring the specification with the intent of not disrupting projects that are already in the works.
Be clear, when you say that, you're really talking people, not someone that, for instance, the item that was continued earlier, but you're talking about someone who has already been through this process, has their entitlement, and is working through plan review,
think if,
or is past plan review and actually waiting just to get their permits.
I'd feel most comfortable with anyone who's submitted an application. So if let's say that I have 5 gas stations in Kansas City, Missouri, I've submitted my application for my 6th. I know it's in a zone that's allowed. I know that this is an appropriate, project. Then I've started the process, but I'm not very far into it. I think it would be reasonable for that person to expect that they should still be able to get through our existing process and not have the goalposts moved. So I would be most comfortable personally saying that anyone who's started the application process is exempt from the moratorium.
That would be as of the day of the adoption of
That's my preference,
the
yes.
ordinance.
Yeah.
The-
Any
the
new
state's-
applications is more or less what you're saying versus ones that already kind of just started the process.
Because again, I want to see this thing stick. I think it makes sense. But I also don't want to give people the opportunity to say I'm being treated unfairly. And we also don't want to do that as a city.
I would also add, I love all those recommendations from Commissioner Enders. I think that we also, at least for me, if we are going to have projects come through, I would like to know how many other gas stations are within a 2-mile or 3-mile radius. I mean, I think there's some information that we want to know, particularly as you are elevating best practices. So we are not working against these efforts in the meantime, right? So just offer a little bit more context for proposals that are coming before us.
Okay. I did have a question on this moratorium. Is July 11, that's only 5 months from today? Is that enough time to do the research and go through the things that you need to do?
Oddly, so staff had already identified this as something that they needed to look at when we were approached with this moratorium. So we've actually done some research already.
Okay.
I think we feel comfortable being able to produce a draft ordinance to you.
What's the current timeline of this moratorium? Where's it at in the whole process, and when's it anticipated that it will be, that it goes through council for full approval?
Well, if it goes to council this Thursday, it would start 10 days.
It going through committee by chance? Okay. Okay. Any other questions from commissioners?
I have one more comment. My preference would be that when this becomes an ordinance, that as much as I appreciate the sentiment of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, my intuition is that putting more gas stations in Kansas City, Missouri does not increase consumption of gas. And so I don't think we should use that as a compelling reason. I think it should be more of a zoning, neighborhoods conversation about what people want, where they live, as opposed to a supply demand conversation, because I don't know if we can prove that that's accurate.
Okay, so at this time, let's go ahead and open it up for any public testimony. If anybody would like to speak regarding docket item number 1, please come forward or raise your hand using the Zoom feature and you will be called upon.
Mr. Chair, no one in the chambers wishes to speak and no one has their hands raised.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and close public testimony then. Anything else you'd like to add or anything else from the commission? Okay, so with that, we'll close testimony then and speak amongst the commission. If there's nothing else we need to discuss, then I'll take a motion.
So what I would likely do, and I'd be curious to know if the applicant feels like this is not achieving what you all are hoping, is in section 1, I would strike the word permits, plan review, project plans, and zoning changes. So I'd strike that whole section and replace it with new applications. That would be my preference. Again, I don't understand if there are other reasons, though, that wouldn't be sufficient. And so I don't want to change it on you if that's not going to achieve what your goals are.
Comfortable with the current language.
Okay, and so if we struck permits, plan review, project plans, and zoning changes and change it to simply say on the approval of any new applications where the subject matter of the project is a proposed gas station. Is that in line with the intent and goals?
And I think when we say new applications, what I'm hearing you say is new applications for, because, so there could be a couple different options, right? One could be that they have to come through this process. And so that would be one type of application. But if there's a option where they could go in by right and to get a building permit through plan review without the entitlement, but it's a new application, you mean, or you intend that as well?
I'm not sure I understand, but what is
Yeah.
your?
No, it's okay. So yeah, so a gas station, sometimes they require a special use permit to come through this process, but if they have the right that they don't have to go through that process and they can go straight in for a building permit,
Yeah,
do
the
you
intent would be
include
to
that as a
encompass
new
that too.
application as well?
Yes, yeah.
I just want to make sure that
So-
we're on the same page.
Yeah, so if there's more appropriate language than new applications, that would be good to add.
Yeah, I
Okay.
just want to be able to clarify and make sure I got what you want. So, yeah.
Don't we know how many there are in the process already?
I don't think they know exactly what that is at this point in time. We know one is, but I don't know if there's any others looking for any permitting of any kind right now.
And is it possible to know? Is it possible to know how many applicants are in the process?
We can research it. We just don't know it off the cuff today, what that is. And again, the goal of this is to not try to go back on those folks and require them to redo everything, but really it's just trying to look, holistically for the future of the city. That's the goal. Hold things at bay for now, but I hear what you're saying. And so.
Yep. Then with,
Yep, let me make sure Commissioner Beasley and Hill, any other comments?
No, I think you all covered them.
I think it is Diane Binkley that just spoke, right?
It is Diane
It is.
Binkley. I apologize. I did not introduce myself.
That's okay. I think she covered one of the questions I had when they don't have to come through us, because we just had a gas station open up here at Truman and Prospect. And I was thinking that I don't remember that coming through us. So yes, I'd like to make sure that that avenue is also addressed in this moratorium.
okay, with
Go ahead.
with great appreciation for the sponsor and the intent of what you all are doing. I recommend, well, do you need a recommendation on this? Yeah, I guess you do. So I recommend approval of this committee substitute for ordinance with the following changes. In the first paragraph, striking the word permits, including building code permits and special use permits, plan review, project plans, and zoning changes, and replacing it with the words new applications. And then in section 1, replacing the words permits, plan review, project plans, and zoning changes with the words new applications.
Can you state what the intent of what you're asking there, why you're adding that, just so
Sure.
it's clear?
With the intent of not unfairly stopping any projects already in the works who have already potentially invested in their project and who have worked with the city, begun working with the city already. And so the intent being to stop any new applications in the spirit of this moratorium.
Okay, so we've got a motion.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second for approval of docket item number 1 with the proposed changes to the actual language to the ordinance as stated in the motion. Helena, can you take roll call on that motion, please?
Beasley,
Aye.
Crow,
Aye.
Anders,
Aye.
Hasek,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Padilla.
All right.
Okay, so it looks like the motion passes for approval by the planning commission for the moratorium with the changes stated. So thank you for bringing it in, and we look forward to the report as you come through
We'll do so. Thank you.
down the road. Okay.
Thank you all.
With that, let's move on to docket item number 2, and I need to recuse myself from this item, and so Commissioner Hill, you get to take over here.
Thank you. All right. Can we read the docket item?
Docket item number 2 is case CPC 2023-00173, a request to approve a rezoning from R-1.5 to R-0.75 for a total of 4 lots to accommodate a proposed apartment complex on about 0.3 acres generally located at 4511 Summit Street. And Anna Naniski is the staff planner.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so as previously mentioned, we're focusing on docket item number 2. This is case CD CPC 2023-00173. The property in question, there are 4 roughly at 4511 Summit Street. The current zoning is R1.5, and the property owner and applicant is requesting to rezone the property to allow for a 16-unit apartment complex. The properties are located in the Midtown portion of Kansas City, Missouri. More specifically, just north of the Country Club Plaza. So I have 2 maps on the screen, one that's a little zoomed out so you can see Country Club Plaza in the corner where my cursor is, with the property highlighted in yellow. And then a close-up furthermore of the 4 lots in question, also highlighted in yellow. This is a through lot in between Summit Street and Headwood Drive. Some views from Google Street View of the subject property. This is if you are standing just north of the properties looking south. Then so over on our, for my presenter screen, left portion of Summit Street. Looking directly at the lots, currently 2 are vacant and 2, or at least when this Google Street View was taken, 2 lots are vacant and 2 lots have detached dwelling units on them. And then this is a view if you're on Hedgewood and you're looking at the back of the property. So kind of a 360 view of what the site looks like. The review criteria for a rezoning case is listed on the screen. I'm not going to go into all items, just items that support city staff's recommendation. We have review criteria B. This talks about the zoning on the property and the uses nearby, and the zoning nearby. So when you look at the site all around, we see lots of other high density structures. To the direct north, we have a 6-unit apartment complex. It is zoned R1.5. Directly to the east, there is a condo building, kind of a condo complex actually. There's 47 units, also zoned R1.5. To the west, if you're looking all along Summit Street between 45th Street and 46th Street, there are lots of townhomes, roughly about 16 units, a few detached dwelling units, and then an apartment complex, from what I can tell, has about 10 units. That's directly to the south on Summit. And then directly to the south of this property, there's also a 67-unit apartment condo complex zoned R.75. Additionally, if you either look even further out, the city council has approved increased density through MPD plans, rezonings to support higher density in this area as well. So we look at like I said, directly to the south, we've got that property. It was rezoned from R.5 to R.75 in 2017. We also have a property that's 0.2 miles to the southeast. That's also a fairly large residential apartment complex that was rezoned from R1.5 to MPD in 2011. As well as on Madison Street, which is northwest, about 400 feet from the subject site, which is in red on my map. I forgot to mention. It was rezoned from R-4 to R5, which now is equal to 0.5 in 2002. And then when you look northeast, there's also a fairly large apartment complex that was rezoned from R1.5 to R6 and R6 to MPD in 2017. Again, all to accommodate this higher density living north of the plaza. The review criteria E talks about the suitability of the subject site for the uses, whether or not, like, it being restricted underneath the existing zoning code. So there are no use or entitlement differences between R 1.5 and R 0.75. What's being addressed here is really the density and the height standards that are the difference between the R 1.5 and the proposed 0.75. And review criteria H talks about the gain, if any, due to the denial or approval or the hardship imposed for the landowner as a result of the denial of this application. And the zoning code currently permits 9 units. So if this rezoning was not approved, they can build 9 units. That concludes my staff report for this particular project. City staff does recommend approval. And I do want to note that there is written testimony in opposition attached to the staff report. And then a few emails came in after that staff report deadline, 1 in support, 2 in opposition, which are attached to Compass KC. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the commissioners to staff?
I have just one question, just so I'm clear on this. There's a couple houses that occupy this general area. Are those included in this rezoning? Okay.
Right. Are there any other questions?
Did we say how tall the 16 unit would be?
0.75 zoning district permits a certain height requirement, but this is also a residential infill lot. So there are restrictions underneath that. It would be roughly 48 feet that this property would be subject to if rezoned.
So that's equivalent to what, 4 stories?
Depending on the construction, yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, seeing there's no other questions from commissioners, can we invite the applicant? Please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Anna. Could you put our presentation up first, please? Good morning still. I'm Doug Stone with the Lewis Rice Law Firm here representing the applicant. To my right is William Block with Block Real Estate Services, who is the developer of the site. Behind me with NSPJ Architects is Rachel Dumsky, who is the architect for the project. Get our, thank you. So while Alana is doing that for us, which we appreciate, I will say that we're, in some ways, this application is a little, thank you very much, a little unusual in that what we're here for today is a rezoning. We're not here for a development plan approval. And the reason why we're not here for development plan approval is because the number of units proposed by this project are less than the threshold, not just for a development plan, which requires 50 or more residential units, but we're also below the threshold for a project plan, which requires 20 or more units. And so ordinarily, we would tell you why it's a good idea to go from one zoning category to another, but we have neighbors who have concerns about what it is that would happen if this rezoning occurred, and we didn't want to ignore their concerns. And so we engaged with the neighbors, not just on a R 1.5 versus R 0.75 zoning change, but what it is we're going to do and how it might have an impact on them. And so we spent quite a bit of time. This case was first set for hearing January 2nd. We had a neighborhood meeting, I think it was the 19th of December, and it became apparent to us that there were some concerns that while reasonable minds can differ, that we thought required some attention and was worth us going back, taking another look, seeing if there were things that we could do to accommodate the concerns that the neighbors have. I think even those that maybe aren't still thrilled with the project, and I think you'll hear from a couple of them today, I think they would still tell you that we took their concerns seriously. We made, and I'm going to walk you through some changes to the site plan that we made to address their concerns. Even though our site plan is not really before you today, we think it's important for you to understand what it is we're going to do to help you analyze the impact of the zoning change that's being requested. I want to start by saying this. As Anna said, the current zoning allows for 9 units. Our zoning change would allow for 17 units. We're going to be building a 16-unit project. So we're talking about going from 9 units to 16 units. I would also say to you that the development of what is now 4 separate lots, were those to be developed as duplexes or something in a little less efficient manner, you would likely have maybe less units, but probably very likely a more complicated traffic pattern on the street. So by consolidating these 4 lots, staying within the height that's permitted by the infill zoning, your code requirements, we are actually making the site more efficient from a use perspective, and the impact will actually involve less curb cuts, right? Less cars on the street, less activity like that, that, you know, we can understand would be of concern to neighbors. So if I could take just a minute or two and walk you through a couple of changes, and then so this is just to put this into perspective for the height question. This is on Summit, looking north toward 45th Street. You can see the building to the south of us here. The perspective makes us look a little taller, but we're essentially the same height, a foot or two difference between the two. This is now looking south from 45th Street down Summit. Again, the development to the north of us. Anna showed you the aerial. Really, we are the infill lot, the missing tooth in grandma's mouth, you might say. Everything around this is already developed. And now we're going to look, so we're going to talk a little bit more about this in a minute. Now we're on the east side of the project, which is Headwood Street. Headwood Street is a 2-way dead-end street that dead ends into the residential complex. Can't see it from this perspective. I'll show it to you in a minute. Keep this in mind. I will be talking a little more about that. Let's go back here. This, yeah, Anna, do you have your aerial? Can we look at that for a second? Sorry. I'm sorry. I did. Oh, yeah, right. I have an aerial at the back, all the way to the back. Sorry about that. So this is Headwood here. This is Headwood here that comes off of 45th Street, comes down. There's a development, a residential development here, residential development here, and the project up here. And so cars are coming up and down Headwood down here. There's a parking area, if you could see this here, around the L. And then each of these buildings have garages. Okay. So one of the concerns that we got from the neighbors was Headwood. Headwood can be, according to them, congested, especially when people park on both sides of the street. Of course, there's a solution to that, which is to provide for no parking on one side of the street, but everyone likes their convenience. And so while these are still public streets, you know, on which anyone could make regulations, the city could, at the moment, people are parking on both sides. The concern on Headwood was what happens when trash trucks come down or moving trucks come down or things of the like. And so we thought that was a reasonable concern. Like I said earlier, we went back to the drawing board. And one of the things that we did was we moved the footprint of the building, the entire building, shifted it, shortened the width of the front yards that would have fronted out onto Summit, but moved the building to the west, which then gave us additional area on the east side to create curb cuts that would allow not just for, no queuing of cars in and out. By the way, our garages are right in, right out, and get into that, but not really relevant for this discussion. But what we did was we moved the building, which allowed us to create this off-street area big enough for both trash trucks to deal with and for moving trucks to deal with. It's a little tight for a moving truck to make the radius, but they can make it. It does work. You just have to, drive carefully, right? So we shifted the building from the east to the west to create for the reduced blockage on Headwood. We also addressed the concern. Well, let me say it this way. The concerns over parking on Headwood could be are going to be impacted whether we develop the site or someone else develops the site, even if it's an 8-unit project. In fact, if it's an 8-unit project, chances are it's going to have more curb cuts than we would call for. We were asked, why can't we have our entrance on Summit? And there's actually a technical reason for that. It's not a matter of some people are concerned that maybe Summit has a little high speed for all these curb cuts and the like. That wasn't our issue. Our issue is that there's a 10-foot plus or minus grade change between Summit and Headwood. And so for us to have a garage or any off-street parking at all and still not exceed the permitted height, you have to go down. Well, to go down from Headwood is a lot less of a trip than it is to have to go down from Summit. From Summit, the grade would be impossible. You'd actually have to build something like they build in mountains, a little switchback device where you just wouldn't be able to get down to the grade necessary to have the parking coming in from Summit. The other thing we did do is our original proposal had 24 parking spaces. We went back to the drawing board and reworked the garage as part of this other garage reworking with shifting the building. And we've added 4 more spaces. So we've gone from 24 spaces to 28 spaces. We knew that parking was a serious concern. And so during this hiatus, our study period, we actually engaged a traffic engineer, had a traffic study conducted. The traffic study concluded that the AM and PM peak, one of them was 6, one of them is 8, and 11. Can you all see that? It's a little. So the AM and PM peaks are 6 trips AM peak hour and 8 trips PM peak hour. Not a very significant impact, I think is fair to say. And really not all that different than what you're going to have if you have 4 duplexes, you're going to have almost the same count. And that, frankly, I as a non-traffic engineer, I look at something like that and I say, well, there's going to be 24 units or 16 units or 24 cars. How are there going to be 8 trips? And of course, the answer that I keep getting from experts is we're talking about the peak travel. That's what we're studying. And there are standards that are applied industry-wide. And so applying those standards, this is what the result is: 8 PM trips and PM peak trips and 6 AM peak trips. The other thing we did was we looked at other properties in the area and what their parking ratios were, so to see whether we were generally consistent with what was being done elsewhere. And you can see that originally we were at 1.5 parking spaces per unit. with our four parking space increase, we're up a little 1.75. You can see along this list, we're generally consistent with the other projects that are in the surrounding area. I know that the neighbors will have some comments, and I want to reserve the ability to respond to what they have to say. We're not here to tell you that the neighbors are irrational. They're not irrational. We all want to protect our homes and our environments and the like. I think that uncertainty is nerve-wracking and the like, but we think that our project doesn't have the level of impact that is going to be overly significant considering what's there now. It's an infill project. It's not inconsistent, as I understand it, with the long-range planning for the future of the city, and frankly, it fits in the corridor. And so we would ask for your support for this rezoning. I don't know, Will, do you have anything you want to add?
No, thank you, Doug, for your synopsis. We don't want to go too far into the detail on this project unless we need to. Will Block, I live over at 44th in Washington. I work at 44th in Pennsylvania, so I'm here pretty much every day. Going by the site, I understand the concerns of the neighborhood. I really appreciate all the feedback we've received in the time we've worked with them. We have several projects in this corridor. We do our very best to accommodate everything we can and still protect growth in the plaza where it's needed, and the future of the plaza, as well as the future of existing stakeholders in the plaza. I understand the concerns of parking along Headwood. We've done the best we could to go out and get a traffic study, even though that wasn't a requirement of this process, to make sure that we could accommodate all the cars we need to inside of our project. So with that said, theoretically, the study's telling us that we won't add to the existing issue along Headwood. I'm not sure what the process for the development of the existing apartments and condominiums along Headwood was, or how those parking counts were calculated, but the existing conditions of that roadway, in my opinion, should not prevent a project that is going to comprehensively provide for the parking of its units inside the project. So I won't add too much to that. I'm here to answer any questions as needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Will.
Thank
One
you.
last thing I'll just say, I'm sorry, I should have said the traffic study did reach the conclusion that after the project was built, there would still be level of service A at the impacted intersections. Sorry, thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. Are there any questions from commissioners to the applicant?
Was the concern from the local residents there, was the concern really just parking along Headwood? Was it that just the main concern? that they
Some have
brought up?
actually had concerns about parking on Summit,
Mhm.
frankly. Yeah, parking and just
Right, and not
access.
just amount of spaces really, but the maneuverability of vehicles through Headwood due to street parking.
It was both.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if Doug covered this. We would support along the west side of Headwood Drive with curb cuts for a project actually developed on this site right now. It's 2 vacant lots and 2 houses that have some asbestos issues. So with a future development of this site, there'd be maybe 2 or 3 parking spots remaining on Headwood along the west side between 45th and our project's southern border. We would support no parking for those spaces to allow for easier ingress, egress along Headwood. It doesn't bother us. I'm not sure if the neighborhood is going to support that solution, but from our perspective, we'd be supportive of that if that's something that they would want to do. It's kind of an existing issue from our point.
Thank you. I have a question. I know it's 16 units, but are those units 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, a mix?
They are a mix. There's a count of 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms. So it's not all 3 bedrooms. The actual middle units are 2 bedrooms, and the corner units will be 3 bedrooms.
I would add, though, if I may, I would add that consistent with the experience that the block development team has had in a couple of projects in this area that are more akin to this, 4400, right, Washington. Although these are 3-bedroom units, these are not family units. These are not the kind of units that have kids. They're really the kind of units that people have, their office and their man cave and their things like that. This is not, these units tend to gravitate toward either empty nesters or, young up and comers and things like that.
We developed the project at 46th in Washington. We call it the Villas at 44 Washington. It was recently built just south of our existing 44 Washington. 44 Washington is 196 units. The Villas at 44 Washington is 8 units. Those units consist of largely doctors from St. Luke's, Chiefs players. We have a firm that actually rents out one of those units for employees. So it's a higher use than a person in every bed, like you might see in a different type of use. So not sure if that helps answer that question, but we have not seen existing parking issues with the villas at 44 Washington.
No, my question is, how many parking spaces are allocated to a unit?
So in the actual rent of the project, the resident will pay for 1 space per unit, but we're 1.75 spaces per unit in the garage total with the 28 spaces. So 1 is included no matter what, and then they'll actually rent that second space as part of the occupancy.
And for guests, will they just park on the street, or is it some guest parking within the garage?
That's yet to be determined. It'll likely be a calculation based upon how many spaces are available at the time the project is finished and whether there's a way to accommodate guests in the garage. The issue is sometimes there will be secured garage access. So that will be, if there's a guest that frequents the building, that might be something that could be worked out. But oftentimes those guests are transient and they would park along the street, most likely on the Summit side due to the grade access to the building and main entrance on the Summit side. We went ahead and studied that with our traffic study. And it's more than enough. It's actually a one-way street with parking along both sides. So there's more than enough space there for potential guest parking.
Yeah, just to make sure that was clear, because I think that's an important point. Remember that the entrance to this building, the garage entrance, is really the back of the building. And so when guests are going to be visiting, the likelihood is that they will approach the building from the front, which is where the normal entrance would be. And so there would be parking for those people, just public parking along Summit, just like there is now, as Will said, on both sides of the street.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
I've got one question. Thank you for explaining why there wasn't, a project plan associated with this or with this rezoning. Would you all be okay with the condition that says that what's built is similar to what was presented? Because I think it is difficult, like when we first saw it come across, to not know what it would look like, and it's helpful to know roughly what the concept is. Is there some way that we can condition that in a way that city staff feels good about and the applicant feels good about, just so that way it doesn't get approved, the project changes drastically, and then all of a sudden something's being built that is further from what was presented?
Sarah should answer that, but let me just say as a overall thing, we're certainly not and I know you don't think we are, in the bait and switch business, right? I don't think that. But even if there weren't a plan here, there are code criteria. So for example, it's an infill site. The height can't be more than X, right? You couldn't get a building permit if your site was more than
Fully understand. I just think it's in best practice, if possible, to put some sort of general loose condition in there that it's general, the project built or approved is generally consistent with what was presented.
Yeah, so I'll comment. My opinion on that is while to me it sounds great and there'd be no issue with that, I don't know how to quantify similar personally. I will say that we have the existing 2 projects that are there today, the villas at 44 Washington and 44 Washington, which are the exact finish style and construction standard that we would build here. So we have the brand standard that we have to replicate on this site to achieve rents that would sustain this development. So we're kind of locked into what we've shown you here today based upon the fact that it's going to be managed by 44 Washington. It's going to be, I don't want to call it a third phase of those first 2 buildings, but it's going to be the same overall development at the end of the day, as far as where it's managed, how it's operated, the standard of construction, the standard of finishes. Our intention is to be at the level of the villas of 44 Washington or an elevated level of finish, both on the outside and inside the units. the villas at 44 Washington are a level above 44 Washington. So with the cost of construction, I'm sure you're aware that something that looks like this is going to be really expensive to build. Achieving the rents that we want to get to here to sustain the project is going to require that we build a project like you've seen here today. So I'm not sure how to quantify that exactly. I'm not.
Yeah, my concern isn't so much the finish level, it's more so just the site layout. And so again, like the major concern that you all identified is traffic patterns, for example. And so if for some reason, same finish level, but you get halfway into the project or you get further into the project and you determine that the site's going to change a bit, that's something that's more so what I'm wanting to protect and keep it similar to what was proposed. I have no doubt you all are going to, finish it out in the way that you see fit. And that's not really the concern from me. So is that something that we could condition to some degree?
Well, I mean, this is a rezoning, right? So I can't really think of a way that you could condition it on what was presented here today in terms of the renderings. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, because I think, with other types of projects that were above the 20 threshold or a larger project, of course, we would be viewing these as companion cases. And so therefore we wouldn't be doing anything in a vacuum, so to speak. Again, there are plenty of projects that for some reason, new opportunity comes up, someone else wants to purchase it for a price you can't say no to, and they want to develop a site that's different. And they aren't as conscientious as you are of the neighbors. But again, it's a situation where you feel obligated to sell the building because it's in the best interest of the investors or whomever it might be. But then all of a sudden someone's building a site that is allowed, zoned correctly. And again, they're doing something different and it could be more disruptive than what you all have proposed. That the goal would be trying to align their intent with the approval. So that way, should something change in the future, you work with city staff. Obviously it wouldn't come through here again because it could be done by right. And so totally understand it might not be possible, but if it's possible, it'd be nice to somehow put a footnote in there that reminds whoever, if something happens, that this was the intent.
I mean, unfortunately, we really don't have a mechanism for something like that in our code.
Okay.
With a project of this scale that doesn't require development plan or project plan.
I thought it might be a stretch, but wanted to check. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Well, I think that we can represent to you on the record that this is what we intend to build, and
No questions about that.
I hear you. I understand what you're saying. With that, if there are, I think we're in the question phase.
Yep, thank you. If there are no more questions from commissioners, now we will open it up for public testimony. If there is someone here that would like to give testimony on docket item number 2, whether you're online or in person, if in person, come to the podium. We'll start with in person first. And if you're online, please raise your hand and keep your hand raised until you have been promoted by staff. When you come to the podium, I'm sorry, for those who are in person, please state your name and address for the record.
Amelia McIntyre, a resident at 4545 Warnell, also a member of the Plaza Westport Neighborhood Association. And I have their letter that was also encompassed but not included in the staff report. Robert Martin is online and he is the president. And I know the order is usually people in chambers, but he is now available to speak if the order could adopt. And I want to thank Commissioner Enders for his observation as to the rezoning is going from 1.5 to 7.5. It is not an approval of a development plan. If they had sought to go with an MPD where it would be a specific plan, there would be safeguards for the neighborhood and that the development would ultimately be as proposed. There will be no opportunity for public engagement after the rezoning goes in place. Anything can happen. So I'm going to hand out the letter in case commissioners did not have an opportunity that we go into a bit more detail. And Robert, there's Martin is available. I think he's out of the.
Yeah, we'll call him. Does that complete your testimony?
Robert Martin's, I will
Yes.
defer to Robert Martin. I think there is a resolution consistent with Commissioner Enders, which is an MPD zoning with a specific development plan. If the developer was inclined to support what that means, that's a way to resolve this concern. I don't want to speak for Robert Martin. He's the president. But the letter outlines the concerns, how this does not meet the review criteria that needs to be applied.
Thank you. Does that conclude your testimony?
I will reserve rebuttal time
We
after
don't have
others.
rebuttal. I'm sorry, we do not have rebuttal.
No, I would defer to Robert Martin if he
Okay.
can be pulled up now.
Well, please, does that conclude your testimony? You can have a
Yes.
seat. Okay, thank you. Robert, we will get to you. Is there anyone else in the chamber that would like to give public testimony? Please come to the podium. Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Mary Lou Nigro, the president of the Brentwood Association, Condominium Association. I'm at 4511 Headwood, and I'm against the rezoning because of the congestion that we now. They're not only going to be taking, they're going to be taking more parking away from us. Already have problems. I really appreciate them taking the time to address the issues and concerns had for Headwood, but now they're going to take additional parking away. We have moving trucks, delivery trucks, that block people in. If there was a time that an emergency vehicle was trying to get through, they may not be able to get to. The rezoning is going to increase density. I spoke about the congestion, but it's also going to cars that are on the streets, brings more people in to try to vandalize cars and things. I really am going to refer to Matt Foucault, who is more familiar with this process and will probably go into more detail.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the chambers that would like to give public comment? Yes, sir. Please come up. Please state your name and address.
Larry Barlish, 4511 Headwood. So my condominium is just directly across the street from this proposed development. And so when you look from my patio, within about 50 feet is where the development would start. But at that point, I'd be looking at the trash trucks and the trash containers and essentially the back of the development. The way it currently stands, we have street cuts on Summit, the next street over, for this area. The four houses that are located there each have their own street cut out to Summit. They don't have street cuts from the Headwood side. So what's being proposed is basically bring in this development, which is going to have, it sounds like about 40 bedrooms altogether, which is going to result in a lot more traffic, a lot more people. And we're also going to eliminate west side of Headwood for parking. So we're going to have less parking available and bring in additional 40 bedrooms of people. And when everything is said and done, the net result is going to be that it's going to lower the quality of life for people that live at the Brentwood as far as living in this new reality, number one. And it's also probably going to lower my property value by probably at least $50,000 or $75,000. There's no question about that. My property value will go down. The parking will become less available, and I'm very much against it.
Thank you so much. Is
Thank you.
there anyone else? All right, seeing none, we'll go to those who would like to give public testimony on docket item 2. Please raise your hand. Staff will recognize you and promote you.
I am promoting Bill Quatman and Robert Martin and Matt Foco. Bill Quatman will go first.
Welcome, Bill. Can you hear us?
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you and see
Thank you.
you.
I'm Bill Quatman. I'm a resident and a board member of the Tutors Homeowners Association. I live at 4516 Summit Street, immediately west of the proposed project site. I look at my front door and my front windows and I can see the two houses that are going to be demolished as part of this project. We have 16 units, not unlike the 16 proposed, although we're a townhome association, more like a condominium than an apartment complex. We have 38 underground parking stalls for 16 units. That's 10 more than are proposed by the developer of this project. For some reason, our project was left off this traffic study that 45 Summit did and was submitted to you, which is amazing to me because we are immediately adjacent to the project site and yet we were excluded. Our ratio is 2.375 in terms of cars to units. We agree with our Headwood neighbors, density is the issue. Because of the 28 stalls for what are proposed 40 bedrooms, and as the developer said, these are not designed for children. These will be adults. So the 40 bedrooms, if it's fully occupied, will be 12 additional residents without parking places. Where are they going to park? They're probably going to park on the Summit Street side, as the developer said, because that's the grade entrance to the west. We've seen as neighbors, I've been there for 3 years now, and the other neighbor's been there longer. Parking along Summit and the adjacent streets brings in street crime. Overnight, it's not the daytime when people are at work, it's nighttime when we have cars parked along the streets that they get broken into. We see broken glass on Summit Street and the adjacent streets every morning. A neighbor of mine, actually, his parents visited from out of town. Their car was stolen off of Summit Street. He was a Royals player, he's no longer with the team, but his parents were visiting from out of town and someone stole their car overnight. So our concern is with increased cars parked overnight and weekends on Summit Street, it'll bring in a more criminal element. We're not far from Westport. We get a lot of foot traffic walking from Plaza to Westport. I think these cars on the street are just too tempting to resist. People check the door handles for locked cars. They break windows if they're locked. Our neighbor to the north of us had his truck broken into last year and things stolen on Summit Street. So we object to the rezoning because it will increase the density and push more parking of these 40 units onto Summit Street, our front street, our front door.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Bill. We have a timer. Thank you. We've captured your concerns. Mr. Martin, you're up next.
Hello, I'm Robert Martin. I'm the president of the PWNA, and I reside at 4646 Broadway. Thank you so much for letting me speak. What I want to do is to represent the neighborhood. We're there, the townhouses and the condos in front of and behind this proposed development, they have their own concerns, but the main concern of the neighborhood main concerns are two. One is the increased density at that point in which the traffic and the parking really can't handle increased numbers. But the main thing that we want to emphasize is that we've had development in our neighborhood for a lot of development for a long time, probably 20 years. And we need the city to uphold its zoning requirements because people have bought into our neighborhood. We buy into all neighborhoods, expecting the zoning to stay the same and for our lifestyle to stay the same. Without compelling reasons, these standards and regulations should remain in force. I want to say that that the owners of the surrounding residential properties have invested in that neighborhood based on the reasonable expectation that the city would uphold the zoning in place throughout the neighborhood, which is R-1.5. And so without compelling reason, what that would actually be good for them, I strongly urge you not to approve zoning. This 4-lot site can still be used to construct a 9-unit multifamily structure, and whether it is financially viable or not for the developers is not our concern, and really is not a concern of the city in order to make this zoning change. So with that, I'll leave it with you, and I thank you for your wisdom, and I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. I believe we also have Matt. Sorry, I don't know your last name, Matt. Fuco.
Yes, Fuco. Thank you very much. My name is Matt Fuco. I'm the president of the 46 Jefferson Condominium Association. We're located to the southeast of the proposed rezoning project. I live at 4530 Jefferson Street. And I wanted to speak really just on one or two points with regard to the density aspect. We have real life examples of the impact of the increased density on our block. What was alluded to and mentioned was the apartment complex to the south at 67 units, which was rezoned to 0.75. Well, now we have some experience with that as far as what has actually occurred. There's been a lot of discussion about Headwood and the congestion. Well, we're experiencing it firsthand. The apartment complex to the south, when that was being proposed to be rezoned to 0.75, was done really as a transitional area because across the street to the south was zoned as UR. So this made sense to rezone, or the city thought that it made sense to rezone as a transitional area. But what we've seen is that developer worked with the neighborhood association as well as us to relocate the entrance to their parking structure on Summit Street. However, their loading dock, their trash was all left on Headwood. And they said the exact same thing that we heard today, that the impact will be minimal, but that has not turned out to be the case. We see moving trucks that physically park, and they have a pull-off parking space just like it's being proposed in this development. And the parking, the moving trucks completely block Headwood Drive, completely from east to west. No cars can pass. Our parking lot dead ends at the south end of Headwood. Brentwood's entrance is at the south end of Headwood. There are times, and you can call the city traffic enforcement, where we've had to call city traffic enforcement because people could physically not leave their parking spaces to go to work. We couldn't find moving companies. The movers completely blocked. So that's one concern. So we've had experience with this. We know what a 0.75 does. There was also no mention in the staff presentation, although it was sort of a brief item in the staff report, is that our 0.75 is not supported by the Midtown Area Plan. Our 1.5 is. It was sort of just a little footnote in the staff report, but it was not mentioned during the staff presentation. So we support the Midtown Area Plan. We support the 1.5 zoning, not the 0.75. And we ask that you listen to the neighbors. We're the ones that have experience with this. We're in and out of that area every day. And we ask that this zoning not be approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else online whose hand is raised that would like to give public testimony on docket item 2?
No one else appears with their hand raised online.
Okay, well, we will close public testimony. And I want to give probably just 2 or 3 minutes back to the applicant to address some of the concerns. We've heard, of course, density, parking, and congestion. I think briefly we heard about an MPD plan. I don't know if that's something that you want to give voice to before we close out your comments, and I'll return it back to the commissioners.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and kick us off, and then Doug can fill in the gaps if there are any here. I appreciate the neighbors' comments. I do respectfully disagree on a few items here. Number one, the Tudors across the street to the west, that's from our perspective a different use than what we would do here. Those are condos, much bigger units, much higher purchase price. They actually go all the way up to 45th Street in terms of the site plan, so they have much more area to put parking beneath their building. Those units are much larger. the ratio of parking spaces per unit is going to be different than ours at the end of the day. So while we appreciate them as neighbors and we think it's really great for the neighborhood, for the plaza, it's difficult to compare the two separate uses together. And the other thing I wanted to say was, I noticed the word in here a few times, or many times in this letter detail, and it's spot zoning. I'm not sure I agree with the word spot zoning. We're going through the same process as the Dorset directly to our south or neighboring property. So we think that our proposal is consistent with that use. While 16 units is going to be much less of an impact in the neighborhood than 67, I think they have there. We do think that it's consistent with that transition to the plaza in terms of both the way the building fits in its height and its footprint and the actual zoning use we are proposing. Doug, anything you want to add there?
I would add just a couple of things. One is that with regard to this area plan, future land use area plan concept, it's kind of a red herring, because I think really what all the staff report acknowledges is that there is a high density residential category. It doesn't specifically mention the R 0.75 zoning. It mentions the 1.5 zoning. But this is the same Midtown area plan that allowed for the Dorset to the south. And so clearly there's been a determination that this R 7.5 is still within the high density category under the land use plan, even though the definition in the land use plan doesn't relate to this specific zoning category. It is still within that same universe of what is within the permitted land use. The other thing I would add is, as the lawyer, Mr. Block is, very polite, and I always try to be polite and deferential, and I am respectful of the neighbors' concerns. But I do sit back and I hear people complaining about something that they could solve, but choose not to. They could have solved their Headwood problem by petitioning the city to have no parking on one side of the street. When we develop, if we are permitted to develop this site, we're between our curb cuts, removing some of the parking, there will only be 1 or 2 spaces left between 45th Street and us anyway. And so we're actually, I know you hear this a lot, we're actually going to improve matters, because we've taken our building, moved it to the west, so that if we do have trash trucks, they're not going to be stationary on Headwood. They're going to have a place to pull right into a bay, do what they need to do, and pull back out again. And so we, just like others have learned from experience, so have we. And we went back to the drawing board and attempted to address those concerns, which we think we did. In the end of the day, here's the question I want you to ask yourself. 9 units or 16 units, is that really what we're fighting about? 9 units versus 16 units, the impact from 9 versus the impact from 16. This will fill in, this is an infill lot. It should be allowed to be infilled consistent with what's along that corridor right now. And so we would ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll turn it back over to commissioners for discussion and for a motion.
So yeah, appreciate all the comments. Pretty familiar with the area. I think that neighbors in that area have rightfully been concerned or upset about just the amount of construction. So I think there's fatigue, even though I don't necessarily think there's necessarily a parking concern. I park along there regularly. And so I'm supportive of the project. I would like to know, just for future reference, how we get this submitted as an MPD, or if that makes sense, or if it's just a much larger hurdle. I do think that it's reasonable for the commission to understand the context of the developer and the work they've done in the area. And so I certainly trust and hope that they'll complete the project as they intend to. Again, someone can come by and purchase it for more, and you just can't say no to that. And then it ends up being zoned for someone else to build a less sensitive project plan. I think that the applicant made a very, very good point to neighbors, and I think that neighbors should really take note and talk to the city, it would not be that difficult to limit parking on one side of the street if that's been causing issues for people getting to work. I think that's a very sensible solution. So I'll be supportive of it, open to other comments, of course, but would like to hear from city staff as to whether they intended to submit as an MPD, if they were steered towards this, or when you would go that direction versus this direction.
There's objectives or goals associated with being designated for an MPD. And at this time, with the proposal, shown to us, I don't believe this would qualify to be zoned MPD. So city staff would have recommended denial on the MPD rezoning.
Got it. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Commissioner Beasley?
Tyler had brought up earlier why we didn't have the plan along with the rezoning, because we have seen that before. I don't recall if that portion was answered.
Yeah, I can reiterate. So for a project plan or a development plan, there's different scales that trigger the need for those projects. And at 16 units, this does not trigger a project plan or a development plan. So we're just
Okay.
considering the rezoning at this time.
And so the one potential solution would have been an MPD, but as was just explained, that wasn't the right solution for a project of this scale.
I take that as correct, Tyler, from what you just added.
They're all shaking their head yes.
Okay.
The only question that I have is about the R.075. Is it or is it not supported by the Midtown Area Plan?
So I will
It's not.
reiterate what the long-range planners told me. There is no area plan amendment for this project because the R.75 zoning district wasn't a district when they formulated the Midtown Plaza area plan. So there is no associated land use designation for R.7.5.
Okay. Well, at this time, I'll take a motion. I will just add one comment. One, I do want to applaud the developers for working with the neighborhood, not only just, hosting an opportunity to get feedback, but actually adjusting the layout and site plan to try to be a problem solver. So I hope that, we don't often see that many times. And so I hope that the neighborhood would continue to work with the developers so that you can reach consensus on what brings value to the area, but also mitigating some of the challenges that have been expressed. I'm also very sympathetic when folks who have made an investment and live in a community are fighting to protect that, and they come to the commission and we look at the land use and we continue to provide modifications or waivers to what it has already been zoned. So I'm hoping that city staff have heard those concerns and complaints many times over, that if the zoning does not match, maybe it's time to revisit it and update it. But certainly it doesn't feel good when you have set zoning parameters and then you recommend approval for a modification to that, even when the neighborhood is in opposition. I will be supportive of the project, but I just wanted to make sure I publicly provide those comments. I'll entertain a motion when ready.
Chair Hill, I move to approve docket item number 2 without conditions.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Will you please call the roll?
Beasley,
Aye.
Enders,
Aye.
Hasek,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Padilla.
Aye.
All right, project's been unanimously approved. Good luck and thank you for coming.
Thank you very much for your time.
All right, ready?
Mhm.
Thank you, Commissioner Hill. Let's move on then to docket item number 3, please.
All right, docket item number 3 is CPC 2023-00144. A request to approve a rezoning to District UR from District R-2.5 and approval of a development plan for a mixed-use development on about 3.6 acres, generally located at the northwest corner of Benton Boulevard and East 37th Street. And I'm the staff planner. One moment while I find the presentation. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So as I mentioned previously, this is case CPC 144 for a development plan located at 3640 Benton Boulevard. The location of the property is in the heart of the city area plan and is located in an R-2.5 zoned area. I've shown you this aerial to show that all of the surrounding uses are predominantly single-family residences with a small portion of B1-1 over to the east of the project. This shows the Oak Park urban redevelopment area plan. This area or this URA requires rezoning to UR in order to get the tax benefits, which is why you're seeing this rezoning. Applicant is proposing to reuse the existing lad school structure, which is seen here on the southern portion of the property, and then is proposing 1 new commercial building and 4 new residential buildings. The proposed uses for the lad school are office, 25 residential units, auditorium and live work, a restaurant, gym, and retail uses, all within that existing building. And the applicant is proposing a total of, I believe it's 56 units in the 4 new residential buildings. The applicant is proposing compliant landscaping. They are located on Benton Boulevard, which is a established boulevard on the major street plan. All these light gray trees that you see on the plan are being preserved, and the darker ones that you see are being added, and that will meet the requirement for the landscaping. They're also proposing landscaping behind the residential buildings to add as a shield for the headlights over here in the parking lot area, and some additional landscaping over to the north to add some screening over for the residential units to the north. The applicant is requesting a deviation from the Boulevard and Parkway standards. The new commercial structure that we see here is required to be a maximum of 20 feet from the property, from the right-of-way line. They're proposing, I believe it's 40 feet from that. So it's 46 feet and 4 inches. Sorry about that. From the property line. And staff is supportive. They're meeting all the other Boulevard and Parkway standards and have worked with staff to make the project overall more efficient for pedestrian standards and for safety and access to the site. So as you can see on this plan, access is off of Benton Boulevard and Bellefontaine Avenue. They did provide a kind of U-shaped parking lot to make it more efficient vehicular access. And then down here to the south on 37th Street is a new access as well. And this will provide some additional parking spaces for the uses in the lad school. And those are also properly screened to prevent that to be seen from the street. Here are some east elevations. I'm providing close-ups of the new structures since the old lad school will be retained, and any new additions or any new additions or renovations will match the existing building. So here are the east elevations for the commercial structure and the residential units, and then a little up close of those. The new buildings are comprised of brick, wood panel accents, and stucco and glazing. And then here you can see the western elevations, again, showing the brick and the wood stucco accents. These stairways in between the two buildings are also all brick, and the trash enclosure matches the accents that they've placed on those buildings. Here's a rendering of what the site will look like as a whole. It's a little outdated, as you saw before. There was a U shape here. Here is a view from Benton Boulevard and East 37th Street, showing that line of trees that'll be preserved throughout the site. And then here's the view from Bellefontaine and East 36th Street. This will be that parking lot area right here with the structures on the Benton side. And then here's just the view of the Ladd School from East 37th Street. We have one outstanding correction that I mentioned, or I didn't mention, but I will mention now. The first is for the lighting on the property. That is a correction just to the plans itself. Staff and the applicant worked with the police department to come to a conclusion for the lighting on the site. The police department was concerned with how dark that parking lot was, and so they're going to come to they'll submit a new plan prior to building permit, and they have met with the police department to come up with new ideas. And then these, and that's condition 9. It used to be prior to ordinance request, but after that meeting, we felt it appropriate to change it to building permit. And then these 11 and 33 are corrections to conditions. They are not platting, and so we're changing the wording from final plat to building permit for condition 11, and for condition 33, removing the wording recording the plat and just changing it to certificate of occupancy. And with that, staff is recommending approval with conditions, and I can answer any questions if you have them.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the commissioners to city staff?
No.
Okay, Commissioner Beasley, I'm looking at you. Okay, with that, let's welcome the applicant then. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioner. My name is Chip Walsh. I'm a member of the development team.
I'm Sam DeYoung. I'm the architect of record.
So we have a short presentation to provide a little additional context. Let me say at the outset that we are appreciative of Larissa, colleagues, supportive of staff's recommendation for approval. The staff would be let me click. The Stanford B. Ladd School Redevelopment Project. One of the schools that were shuttered in the early to mid 2000s by the Kansas City Public School District, part of its repurposing. I've had the pleasure to appear here before on some of the other school projects I've worked with. This is the project where we are looking at body influence within its vitalizing and bring it back. This project
We're losing his audio.
Sorry. You're losing my audio because I'm trying to figure out how to make the page turn, so I apologize. So the next, perfect. Right where I want to be. So this is a project that is being championed by Local Code Kansas City. Local Code Kansas City is a new real estate development company. It was created by Asia Morris. I am actually standing in for her today. It is a minority and women-owned business. It is affiliated with Local Code, which is a national nonprofit. It is about trying to go into disenfranchised, disinvested communities and do community-centered real estate. Here, that means doing work within the Kansas City East Side. Local code strives to combine apprenticeship for local entrepreneurs with venture funding, often referred to as integrated capital, regenerative real estate development principles to revive local ownership of businesses and real estate. The goal from doing this is that we strengthen the economic heart of our community. Next slide, please. The reason why local code exists is because historically real estate development across our country has been characterized by exclusionary practice that are racist and extractive in their impact, whether by design or effect. In Kansas City, we all know well that Troost Avenue has sort of become that dividing line, and local code is working to shift that dynamic to address the structural inequities that have been plaguing our community and also throughout our country. As Asia will say, it's not a nice to have, it's an essential for any real change to have need. Local code does this by championing the principles of regenerative development. You'll see here on this slide the 7 principles. This is sort of at the heart of the mission of what local code is. It starts from this idea.
I'm sorry.
From,
I'm sorry,
yes.
the slides are not progressing for us online.
Are you able to see the slide that says
Yep.
how at the top?
Nope, now we can. Now we can.
There
Thank
we
you.
go. So, this is done through championing the principles of regenerative development, which are listed before. There are 7 principles. It starts with this idea of from the inside out, which is through community engagement as a never-ending practice. Leadership from within the community. Asia Morris, who is the founder, lives within Oak Park. She is driven by this school for a number of years since it was shuttered in the early 2000s and said, why can't this be more? You then work to mentor and collaborate between local leaders and development practitioners. That's how I was actually first introduced. I do work primarily through 2 other platforms, Sustainable Development Partners and Mercer Street. I've worked on several other adaptive reuse projects within our community. You then work to align financing and non-extractive appreciation rate. You work towards community equity and ownership built into the operating model. And you strive to have anti-displacement built into the operation engagement throughout the project neighborhood. All of which is then wrapped around this concept of regenerative design and development. At the heart of our mission at Local Code Kansas City is local ownership. And what that means here is that they will bring in equity investors. And once we clear 5 years of operation, which matches with sort of some of the compliance things that we will use with financing, utilizing historic tax credits, new market tax credits, and other financing tools, we will then start to see a buyout of that integrated capital investor and a buy-in of community investors. That is the goal, is to sort of create a mechanism through which folks that live here, if they choose, folks that live within this area in the larger East Side community will have the opportunity to buy in and become an owner of this property. And as this property continues and hopefully appreciates over time, they will then see the return on that investment as anyone else would. Again, that is one of the primary goals of Local Code Kansas City. With respect to the LAD School, our development program is, in its essence, a mixed-use development. We plan to adaptively reuse the existing school. It will be rehabbed in conformance with Department of Interior standards for historic preservation. We've attained our Part 2 from the Department of Interior. We have a Part 1 submittal standing in the queue with the state of Missouri for a state historic tax credit award pending. We will then pair that with between 40 to 50,000 square feet of new construction, which, as Larissa indicated, consists of a new commercial building and then up to 4 colonnades, which will then allow for an additional 61 to 75 residential units, depending on how we lay those out. There is some flexibility within what we've submitted, but the residential units will be a mix of studios, 1-bedrooms, and 2-bedrooms. Again, the applicant here is Local Code LAD Development Partners. It is an affiliated entity of Local Code Kansas City. It is a single purpose entity set up to hold title for purposes of doing the development and obtaining the financing. The request to rezone to UR is twofold. First, as Larissa said, This project was awarded tax abatement from the LCRA last November, and as a condition of that, must have a UR designation in order to proceed. Secondly, the current zoning here is R-25, and the residential uses are in, development uses proposed within the UR would be in conflict with that unless the zoning was changed. And with that, that is our presentation. Again, we're here to answer any questions you may have about what our design goals are, what our development goals are, and again, we appreciate your consideration of our application.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the commissioners to the applicant?
Give a sense of projected rents.
Yes. So we have committed to setting aside 10% of the units at 70% affordable. And then we are also using best faith efforts to try to set an additional 10% aside at 50% affordable income levels. Right now, we are projecting rents being somewhere between 130 to 145, depending on unit type. Those numbers are somewhat in flux as looking at what the market studies are, Commissioner Enders. And they do seem to be appreciating within this area. But this will not be something similar to, say, the residences at Park 39, which I'm currently working on over at 39th and Main, the old Westport High, where you'll see rents there sort of $2 and even in some cases above $2 because the market can support that. This is a different location and also a different programmatic goal from the development side.
Then the ownership shift where it goes more heavily towards community ownership, is that for the entire project or is it somehow put in different buckets and siloed?
So you will have within the ownership local code Kansas City as an owner. You will then have as basically a limited partner the equity investors day one. The nonprofit will also have a nominal ownership interest. And then what we would expect is that there would be a disinvestment of the initial equity investor. If we shoot the moon, it would go to zero. Reality is it'll probably go down to maybe 1/3, 1/4, 1/5 of what the original position is. And then coming into that would be the community buy-in. That will be based on sort of what the market, what the interest is from the community. They will sit there as any other investor and they would have the same risk reward as any other investor. If we're doing our job correctly, then they would see dividends distributed, on a quarterly basis going forward from their time of investment. We've also entered into a community benefits agreement with the Oak Park neighborhood. That was also a condition of sale from the KCPS, and it does sort of provide for a governance structure for operating the site that also guarantees that you have members of the Oak Park neighborhood involved in tenant decisions.
So the intent is to keep the whole property as that entity. It wouldn't you wouldn't break off part of the residential from the commercial or anything.
No.
Gotcha.
No.
Thanks.
I think there is within new markets and within the new market tax credit program, there are some programmatic rules that limit the amount of residential income compared to commercial income. We have looked at whether or not we are getting too close to that threshold. That means that we might take what is a single parcel and subdivide it, but it would be the same ownership group over both.
Any other questions from the commission? Commissioner Beasley?
I'm still a bit confused on the projected rents. You said 130 to something? Is that per square foot? What are you telling us?
I'm sorry, I was asked what were the projected rents, and I gave a cost per square foot between $1.30 to $1.45, which is indicative of what we're seeing sort of towards the upper end of that sub-market for market rate rent. To the extent then that we are doing units at 70% affordable or 50% affordable, they would be below that.
So that's
don't-
for the commercial space as well as the residential?
No, that would be for the residential units. For
What about your
the
commercial?
The commercial space, there's several considerations, Commissioner. One is the level of build out for tenant improvements and how you monetize that over the lease term. But our modeling is starting on a triple net basis around $9 to $10, depending on what the use is. So, and again, from what we understand of this submarket, that appears to be in range.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, anything else? All right, with that, let's go ahead and open it up for any public testimony. If there's anybody out there that would like to speak regarding docket item number 3, please come forward or raise your hand using the Zoom feature and you will be called upon.
Nobody appears online.
Okay, let's go ahead and close public testimony then. Anything else to add? Kind of looked it through the conditions and okay with those two?
Yes.
Kobe, I need to come back just one more time on this pricing. So what's the unit size or the average unit size to figure this $1.30 or $1.35 a square foot?
Commissioner, I just turned off my Wi-Fi connection, so I can't pull up the latest pro forma. If you want that, give me 1 second to reconnect.
Okay, thank you.
1 second while I reconnect.
Yeah. So within the existing building, a typical classroom size is, we're trying to be pretty sensitive to the existing classroom and the way that the building was laid out. And so a typical classroom is around 700 to 750 square feet. And so those are, some of them are a little bit larger. And so we're kind of ranging in the 1 to 2 bedroom, depending on the size of those. Within the new construction units, as Chip mentioned, we're looking at between 2 bedrooms, 1 bedrooms, and studios. And so the 2 bedrooms in the 1,000 square foot range, the 1 bedrooms are in the 600 to 700 square foot, and then the studios are in the 400 square foot range, I believe.
And then to go back to the commissioner's question about rents, right now under our current modeling, which is still being finalized, but the current modeling we have see rents start at $885 for a studio and going up to $1,385. I'm sorry, we do have a couple at $1,500 for a couple of the 2 bedroom, 2 bath units. So anywhere from $885 up to a little over $1,500 is what our current estimates are. So, and then for the commercial, we are right now showing triple net. So that's before you add on CAM, before you would look at monetizing any tenant improvements, running anywhere from $8 to $10 a square foot. There are these competing tensions. You're trying to build something that is affordable, but you still have to be able to generate enough revenue to get through your financial underwriting. So that's the needle we're trying to thread.
Understood. Thank you.
You bet.
Okay. I just have an off the wall question. And Chip, thank you for bringing these in. You've done a great job with all these other schools, and I know you'll do a great job with this one as well. But I'm just curious, do you have some of your clients that come in that actually went to school there and they want a spot or a room that?
So Asia's the better person to ask that. If you're asking that about across all the projects I've worked on, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Westport High, which is the most recent and coming online this month. I cannot begin to tell you the number of times we get calls from people graduated there in the 50s and the 60s. Can we come and do a tour? So yes, the legacy, the connectivity, these were always part of the social fabric of their communities, regardless of the area of the city. And they're an important building block. And in most times, not always, they're still usable. And so it takes hard work, but it is good when you get to that end and you have moments like that, Commissioner, where you have former students that come back and go, wow. So.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. I was just kind of curious about that. Thank you. All right, so we've been through public testimony, I believe, and anything else to speak amongst the commission, or I'll take a motion, please.
Chair Corral, I move to
Be-
approve.
Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
No, sorry. Before the motion, I was just gonna say I'm supportive of this project. I went to LAD as an elementary school. It was my kindergarten, first and second grade experience. So I'm glad to see it come back. And previously having served on the Kansas City School Board, knowing, the process along with Asia. Hey, I graduated from high school with Asia, but just to see people who have benefited from an asset come back and reinvest in the community is awesome. So I just wanted to say that. Sorry.
Very good, thank you. I'm sure they'll be happy to rent you a spot.
I know I got to make some more money to hold on this spot and another one, but Kobe, I can work with you. You can hire me and I can afford it.
Gotcha.
Chair Corral, I move to approve docket item number 3 with conditions revising conditions number 9 and 11 to read prior to the building permit, and revising condition number 33 by striking the words recording the plat.
Second.
So I've got a motion and a second for approval of docket item number 3 with modifications to 3 of the conditions as stated. So Paulina, can you take roll call on that motion, please?
Beasley,
Aye.
Crow,
Aye.
Enders.
Aye.
Hasek,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Padilla.
Aye.
All right, looks like the motion passes 6-0. Thanks again for
Thank
bringing it
you.
in, and good luck. Yeah, there's one right back there in the corner. You need to go. Yep. All right, let's move on to docket item number 4. We might take just a couple minutes here while Commissioner Padilla comes back. Take a moment. Maybe let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break if you don't mind.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
And this is the last item.
I'm sorry,
This is the last item.
this is the last one,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yep.
What's that? Oh, I'm not sure. Commissioner
Um,
Hill, are you there? And Commissioner Beasley? You need that as well? Okay. Let's go ahead and start.
Okay. Docket items 4.1 and 4.2 are companion cases. 4.1 is CPC 2023-00169, a request to approve a rezoning from District R-80 to Districts R-7.5, R-5, and R-2.5 on about 160 acres, generally located at the southeast corner of Northeast 96th Street and North Tullis Drive, allowing for the creation of 396 residential units. And case number 4.2 is CPC 2023-00170, a request to approve a development plan which serves as a preliminary plat in the proposed zoning districts, as mentioned prior, at Northeast 96th Street and North Tullis Drive. And the staff planner is Matthew Barnes.
All right, good morning still. Matthew Barnes, City Planning Development Management Division, here to discuss docket item number 4, which is the Botham Residential Development. Located in the Northland, just east of 435. Here's a closer view of it. You can see Northeast Shoal Creek Parkway to the west and Northeast 96th Street right to the north. On the far right side of the screen, you can see the city limits with Liberty. Closer view yet, you can see the regulated stream that divides this property in half. In the blue line there, there's a closer view of Shoal Creek Parkway there, an adjacent neighborhood to the. Here's a view looking south from Northeast 96. You can see some existing mature trees on site. The applicant is retaining most of these trees and including them in their amenity spaces. The site is fairly undeveloped. There's just a single family home on it currently, which will be. For the rezoning, the applicant is proposing 2 separate zonings, which kind of follow the regulated stream. East of that is proposed to be R7.5, which is the same zoning as the adjacent homes to the east. And then west of the regulated stream, they're proposing R2.5. Development plan, they're proposing 396 units. All are single unit buildings. They're proposing 9 phases with a trail amenity on the western side of the regulated stream. I've outlined that in red. They are not proposing any trail connection from the east to the west. 88-450-03 requires connections to neighboring areas as well as internal connections. For the neighboring areas, they must provide at least 1 connection to all adjacent properties. And for internal connections, it's required for pedestrian connections to common outdoor areas and pedestrian amenity features. We have 2 conditions that they would like to discuss. The first one is condition number 6, which states that the applicant update their development plan prior to being heard by City Council to show a pedestrian connection across the stream buffer as required by section 88-450-03, which requires pedestrian connections to neighboring areas and internal pedestrian connections. Residents on the eastern side of the stream do not have internal access to those trail amenities that are being dedicated to satisfy parkland dedication, and the applicant does not wish to provide this connection, and is requesting removal of condition number 6. The second condition is condition number 25. That says that any trails to be credited towards satisfying the parkland dedication requirements per 88-408-8 shall be a minimum of 7 feet in width and be constructed of concrete. The applicant has agreed to do the 7-foot wide trails, but is proposing asphalt instead of concrete. Ricky Sanchez from the Parks Department is in attendance to discuss the requirement. With that, staff recommends approval of the rezoning and approval with conditions for the development plan, and I can take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the commissioners?
I have one regarding, you said the asphalt is on the walking trail.
Do you mind stop sharing the screen?
Yes, they're proposing asphalt for the walking trails.
So what is that surface that is supposed to be good for walking? Is that made of asphalt or is that a different material?
I might defer to Ricky Sanchez in the Parks Department to kind of comment on that.
Okay, thank you.
Are there other places in a new developments we've used asphalt instead of concrete?
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Ricky Sanchez with the Parks Department, 4600 East 63rd Street. As for the question with regards to what the material is, sometimes you'll see us do a trail and there's like a little springiness to it, and it's made out of a black material. It's like a compacted rubberized material. It's not asphalt, but it's done on top of a layer of concrete. So a lot of times we'll repave that, or we'll add that on top of an existing concrete trail. And as far as any other neighborhoods that could have asphalt, there probably are some older ones. This is a standard that the Parks Department is using. It's just concrete. We try to do concrete in every trail that we do on parkways and boulevards, on with internal to parks. And so that's just the same standard that we're asking of this one as well.
Any follow-up questions, Commissioner Beasley?
No, I didn't realize concrete was under it, so that would be an added cost then if we wanted that type of surface. So no, I guess I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
So once the developer builds the trail, you all maintain following?
So most of the time in this trail falls within a private open space. So it does normally, it is owned by that private entity. There are times that, and we have seen it from the Parks Department, that the trail falls into deconstruction. It's not in a good, safe, state. And so after the developer has already gone away and then the HOA or the Homes Association is now in charge of it, they didn't properly do their due diligence to save that money to resurface it or keep it up, keep it maintained. So they usually call the Parks Department and says, hey, can you guys resurface this? Or they'll go to a PIAC request and ask for money for that to be resurfaced, even though it is on private property.
Okay, I think on this one, what condition 25 is it credited towards the dedication with the parkland dedication, so but that still doesn't become part of the parkland. It's private owned.
Correct. Yeah. You can have private property. So like any of the clubhouses that you may see, they can count those toward that parkland dedication. And so since they are using this as part of their way of meeting that parkland dedication requirement, we're just asking that it meets the standard of the Parks Department.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions from the commissioners to city staff?
So city staff does or does not want number 6 to be removed, east-west connection.
We were requesting that they provide that connection.
Okay. And then the half of the trail that isn't disturbing the stream buffer versus the half that is, I imagine it doesn't make sense to do like half concrete, half not. Is the ask for concrete just because it's standard or because it's near a stream and there's more, potential erosion?
It's standard.
Okay. Anything else? All right, let's move on to the applicant then. Good morning. Thanks for your patience today.
Thanks for having us.
Aaron Schmidt with Hunt Midwest, 1881 Maine, joined Young with Hunt Midwest. So we're Aaron. We've been here several times, but short slide on Hunt Midwest. Hunt Midwest is a family-owned company owned by the Lamar Hunt family. Lamar brought the Dallas Texans to Kansas City 60s, and we've been here ever since investing.
That's seeing the presentation online. There we go. Thank you.
The next slide just gives you an idea of our residential experience in the Kansas. Celebrating our 30-year anniversary of doing 17 communities and over 7,000 lots. Probably one of the biggest residential, definitely in the Northland. And just want to say thanks to staff for the recommendations of approval and working with us on this property. Just a couple points I want to hit out. We are tight for permanent open space, well beyond the standards that proud of, have the Hunt name on it, and quite some time. We are going to be preserving some of the trees. One of the best feature of this property, there's an old fence row with some mature sugar maples that you can see right there, which we're going to preserve and make part of our amenity track. So that's going to be, and that's right at the entrance on 96th Street. So that's. We also had our public meeting and provided all that documentation to the city. At that meeting, there was no. So the conditions, the pedestrian crossing, there is actually a pedestrian crossing on 96th Street, which connects the communities.
Yep, I think you're asking you to speak directly into the microphone. Can't hear you. There you go.
There is a pedestrian connection that is on the property already that runs along 96th Street. That goes over a very large box culvert, which handles the stormwater flows through that area. So if someone wanted to go from the east side of the community to the west side of the community, that pedestrian connection is there. They can do that today. And that will remain throughout the course of the community. Adding an additional one where staff has suggested it's got several problems. One, it's going to take out riparian area and trees, which is kind of the opposite of what we're trying to get done in this neighborhood by preserving the riparian corridor and the existing vegetation out there. Two, it's going to be in the floodplain and in a core regulated area. So we try to avoid doing trail crossings in floodplains, especially with communities like this that are going to have young families and young kids. We don't want kids crossing creeks in floodplains on trails. We want them to use the existing crossing that's on 96th Street that's already been designed and is up above that floodplain and next to the road. That's a much safer way to make that connection. Condition 25, again, Commissioner Enders, you hit the nail on the head. Is this going to be a city maintained trail? No. This is a privately maintained trail. Just so you know, Hunt Midwest controls the Homes Association all the way until the final lots are sold. We're in the process of turning over Woodneath Farms, which is to the east of this. We've owned and managed that Homes Association since 2002, I believe. So again, we've been doing this for 30 years. We do asphalt trails in our neighborhood for our private trails that are privately maintained. There's several reasons for that. And before I get into those reasons, we do build this with a substantial rock base, which is very important for subgrade and stability of this trail. So we've been doing it for a long time. We know how to do it. We know how to do it well. We have to maintain it. So it is as the homes association. So we do build it up to a standard that is very comparable to concrete. The reason we don't do concrete, one, it's a lot more expensive for the homes association to repair and replace and maintain after we leave. But probably most importantly, two reasons. One, it's better to run on. If you talk to any runner around and talk to their knees, they want to run on asphalt. They don't want to run on concrete. It's a much more a much better situation for runners. And the reason it is because asphalt's a flexible pavement. And with the topography close to the floodplain, some of the dirt conditions we have out there, asphalt can accommodate any subgrade movement or any swelling of some of the fatty clays that we've got in the Northland. Concrete is a rigid pavement, so any swelling or movement of the ground, you get a crack, and you get displacement of that concrete, which gets you a trip hazard. So it is, although concrete sounds better, and I understand if it was a public trail, yes, concrete all the way, that's better, and the city's maintaining it, but we've got 30 years of experience telling us how to do these trails well, and asphalt is a much better product.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant?
Is there any opportunity to connect to the trail system that is the Homes Association to the east?
Yes, so we'll have sidewalks through that section that will connect into the existing sidewalks within Woodneath that connects to that trail system. So you'll have public access for the part east of the creek. You'll have public access to the trail, the new trail west of the creek that we're building. You also have public access to the trail that's existing in Woodneath via sidewalks.
Gotcha. So on Northeast 94th Street, you could walk over and access the trail, looks like.
I think, yeah, let me look at my maps here, but I think that's right. Yeah.
And do you have a sense of what the cost would be for a pedestrian crossing?
$700,000 probably, if we could get approval to do it. To get it up and out of the floodplain, it's a massive cost. The Corps may come back and tell us no. The city tries to not allow you to do work in riparian areas to preserve it. So, we've got two big hurdles to jump over just to have the privilege of building the trail crossing that a couple people might use instead of using the existing one on 96th Street, which is safer. It's got street lights on it already. It's just a much better situation.
It does feel as though most of the homes or the lots are on the east side are situated in the southern part of the area. And so it does make sense in that respect. But what's the elevation change going down to the stream? Do you happen to know?
On the east side?
Just either side, I guess.
From the east side, there's probably 50, 75 feet of fall from the one side to the other.
Wow. Okay.
If not more, and on a couple corners. On the west side, it's not as steep. And again, if you look at all of our neighborhoods that we've done, Benson Place, Staley Hills, Woodneath, Riverstone, Cadence, we do have all these trails that are asphalt. They've worked extremely well for us. The residents of our neighborhood love them. In most of our subdivisions, you do have, if you don't live directly adjacent to the trail, you can get on a sidewalk to walk to the trail, and that's been extremely successful for us too. So it does work, and it does work very well.
Is there typically water in this stream, or is it a dry bed most of the time?
It's wet. Yeah. It's wet, and where the stream is actually pretty flat. So, it's not just putting a culvert in, it's putting a culvert in bringing a bunch of dirt to get it up and over the floodplain. So, I mean, you end up, your cross section ends up wiping out a bunch of that riparian area. We've been discouraged from doing that in almost every community we've done, for our own purposes, but then also the stream buffer ordinance. I mean, it's contrary to what the goal. And again, you can get to the trail by going up on 96th Street.
That sewer line already in adjacent to the creek there? Is that something you got to put in as part of this project?
It's already in.
Okay. All right, any other questions for the applicant? Commissioner Beasley? No, you've got something.
I just liked what he said about the rock base. So that is getting the type of surface I was concerned about for people walking and running. So I'm satisfied with that. The other thing is I thought about Bruce when he was talking about the water. So do we have water detention stuff in this development?
Yes, we'll have several detention basins in the community. We haven't done the full design on those, but those will meet all the requirements of the city.
Okay, so Kobe, I need you to ask Bruce's questions.
You know what Bruce's questions are. You want to include green infrastructure as part of your initial cleaning before it goes into the storm sewer system or the back to the waters?
Yes, we will, we'll meet the requirements of the BMP ordinance of the city, which includes water quality.
Okay. Anything else? All right, so at this time, let's go ahead and open it up for public testimony. If there's anybody that would like to speak regarding docket item number 4, please come forward or raise your hand using the Zoom feature and you will be called upon.
It does not appear that anyone in the room wishes to speak, and there's one person online, Jennifer Robinson, and I am promoting her now. Hi, Ms. Robinson.
Hello.
Yeah, please state your name and address for the record.
Jennifer Robinson, 10038 North Palmer.
Okay.
I just wanted to add to this. I know that the area that's requesting to be developed is farmland. There's cows on it, and it's an area that, you know, is desirable to this community just because of the animals, the nature, the wildlife that's on there. And it's not something that, you know, myself or our neighbors want to develop. And it's my understanding that the area there was actually donated by someone who did not want the area developed into residential area into residential units. It's just something where it's very popular due to walking. Our kids enjoy it with the animals, and this area is already pretty crowded, and to lose that acreage for additional residential units isn't something that we desire.
Okay.
No one else appears with their hand raised?
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Robinson, for your comments.
One more person.
No
just
more?
raised their hand.
Okay.
One more.
One more?
One
Oh,
more. Just
go right
raised their
ahead.
hand. All right, I am promoting Tierney Clement.
Good morning. Sorry for the late hand raise. My name is Tierney Clement. I reside at 8150 Northeast 97th Terrace. And I just wanted to echo what the last lady said. I have been a resident of Benson Place for, gosh, I've owned a home there since 2005. I chose Benson Place because of that farmland. It reminded me of where I grew up. And I guess my biggest concern is just like the school districts. I feel like the school where my kids go, Shoal Creek Elementary, is like already bursting at the seams. So I just was wondering if there's been any thought to like either rezoning the schools or if what's going on with that.
I think from our standpoint, the school district, no, we don't know that's a total separate entity than the city is.
Okay.
So they would probably do their own planning and growth plan on their own, where we're looking at it at this more from a city standpoint.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else, Larissa?
No one else appears with their hand raised.
Okay. Well, this time we'll go ahead and close public testimony. It sounds like the comments we got from the public are they'd like to see this to be open space, farmland. Kind of hard to do sometimes with the development. I think this follows the area plan, doesn't it? So this particular project as proposed, it does follow the area plan that's been generated for this whole area. So it's kind of following that. Not sure if there's anything else we need to discuss. Anything else you'd like to add?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we'll close testimony at this time and speak amongst the commission. I imagine with the two issues that are being discussed with the asphalt on the trails, as well as the crossing over the creek area there.
I'm
Okay.
fine with what the applicant's asking for.
Yeah, it seems like I'm just going to start with number 25, the crossing over the creek. It is kind of an expensive deal. It would be a challenge to get permitted if it does. I can see holding off on that one, especially with the connectivity that's there for the trail system on the east side and into the existing neighborhood to the east. The material on the actual pedestrian paths, kind of waiver on that. I mean, it's a city standard to use that as concrete. Totally get the asphalt piece. The only reason I would be in favor of that is because it's being maintained and operated and used and by the HOA and by the developer themselves. If it was going to public and for their maintenance and operation, definitely would want it concrete. But so this is one I'm really on the fence about, to be quite honest, because it is a standard.
Comments make sense to me, and I'd prefer personally to live in a neighborhood with an asphalt trail, and also if I'm paying into the HOA, I'd prefer to maintain asphalt as opposed to concrete.
Agree to that.
Any comments from Commissioner Hill or Beasley?
No comments from me.
So a question on if it's a standard, do they have to get a waiver? Or are we good just with saying we are comfortable with their proposed material use?
Let Parks Department answer that.
So the materiality is not part of the code. It's just a standard that we added to the condition. And so I don't think that it.
So we don't need a waiver.
No, and any other developments we have, does this same requirement come through? Are we setting a precedence here for any other new developments that come through and say, well, we don't want to follow the concrete, let's stick with asphalt?
I wouldn't know off the top of my head. I haven't seen the standards for that one. If it is a standard that we've placed in the language, I don't know how new that language is.
So it's just, again, it's just a city standard for city maintained trails and things like that. And so would it cause, further discussion later on down the road by another developer? Probably. But we can always talk about that when the next one comes.
I just have a quick question. So, Ricky, so you mentioned that the HOAs then will ask the city to pay for repairs and keep these trails. How often does that happen? Like,
it's not very often. It depends on how how engaged that particular HOA is and how it's set up with its dues. Some, there are developments that work great, and there are tons of developments that have these private trails and they get maintained by those entities. There are just those couple of them where the board falls apart, and this is usually 30 years down the road after the development has been developed. And then that's when we start getting these requests. And so that is the purpose for the ask.
Yeah, I don't think it matters which material it is. Yeah, the HOA probably doesn't maintain enough in their reserves to pay for these kind of things, so they go to PIAC to get the financing for that, if they can get it. Yeah, I think so.
Chair Crowell, I move to approve docket item 4.1 without conditions and 4.2 with conditions, striking condition number 6 and revising condition number 25 to read asphalt instead of concrete.
Second.
Okay, so I've got a motion and a second for approval of docket items 4.1 and 4.2. By striking condition 6 out of 4.2 and then modifying condition 25 to be asphalt in lieu of concrete. Paulina, can you take roll call on the motion, please?
Beasley,
Aye.
Crow,
Aye.
Anders,
Aye.
Pasek,
Aye.
Keel,
Aye.
Padilla.
Aye.
All right, looks like the motion passes in 6-0 in favor of the project. Thank you for bringing it in and good luck as you move forward.
Thank you very much.
All right, I think that's it for our cases today. Is there anything else we need to bring before the commission?
There's nothing else.
All right. So our next meeting is going to be what date? So today's the 20th?
Yep, so it'll be on February 20th.
Do we know where it's going to be yet? If it's going to be here upstairs, virtually or whatever?
We will let you know when we send you the docket.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. So with that, motion to adjourn. What then? It's got a longer life. too.
Yes, yes.
So you don't have to maintain as much. Granted, I understand that asphalt trail is, the loading on that is minimal.